Hello, today we are going to discuss mitosis. So, the phases of mitosis. So first, what is mitosis? It is the type of cell division that results in two daughter cells, each having the same number and kind of chromosomes as the parent nucleus, typical of ordinary tissue. So any cell that is not a sex cell is going to go through the process of mitosis, which is just cell division, so going from one cell to two cells. And there are four different phases of mitosis. There is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. I'm going to go over all those in this slideshow today. PMAT is kind of an acronym that people use to remember the order of the phases. And then while cytokinesis is that final splitting or separation of cells, it is technically not a part of mitosis. Now, in the definition of mitosis, we talked about chromosomes, and the bottom picture is just to show you what a chromosome is. So chromatin is DNA basically in its stranded ladder form that we've been studied and looking at in previous videos. When chromatin, so that really stringy stranded form of DNA, is coiled up round and round and round and round and round really tightly, that is when it becomes the form of its chromosome. Okay, so chromosomes are just really tightly compacted DNA. It's still DNA, so the strands are still there. It's just wrapped around itself over and over again to be in this chromosome form. The reason for that is that it is much easier to separate essentially all this genetic information when it's in giant chromosome chunks as opposed to trying to separate it in its long, stringy chromatin form. And we'll see some examples of why that's the case. Okay, so the first part of mitosis is called prophase. Okay, and it's the first stage of cell division before metaphase, during which chromosomes become visible as paired chromatids and the nuclear envelope develops. Envelope disappears. The first prophase of meiosis includes the reduction of division. So meiosis will be for another video, another day, but for mitosis, prophase, chromosomes have formed and they have matched with their pair, and the nuclear membrane, so the nucleus that surrounds all this DNA, that disappears. Now, if you remember, leading up to mitosis is interphase, particularly the synthesis part of interphase, which is where DNA replication happens. So at this point, starting mitosis, there is the DNA completely replicated. So if you look in this picture below, that is technically what chromosomes would look like, just kind of like a gummy worm kind of shape. And when they are matched together, so with their replicated part, that is when they are sister chromatids. And essentially what happens is, at the start of prophase, those sister chromatids are attached to one another, and eventually, by the end of mitosis, they will be separated into two identical daughter cells. You can see even in the GIF, those sister chromatids, those identical pairings of chromosomes are attached to one another, and you'll see in future parts of this video that they will be separated. Alright, so the next phase is metaphase. So the second stage of cell division between prophase and anaphase, during which chromosomes become attached to the spindle fibers. Okay, so this complex called the spindle apparatus, so these kind of gold things with all these wires coming out of them, that is known as the spindle apparatus. And essentially what it does is it takes microfilaments and it attaches them to the centromere, which is that little dot thing about the center of chromosomes. And what this spindle apparatus does is it lines up with chromosomes in the center or the equator of the cell. Okay, and you can see that in the GIF below there. But yeah, spindle apparatus, very essential to making mitosis possible. And there's another definition there that I'll let you read on your own. But yeah, metaphase chromosomes are being lined up at the equator or center of the cell by the spindle apparatus. All right, next phase, anaphase. Okay, so it is the stage of meiotic or mitotic cell division in which the chromosomes move away from one each other toward the opposite poles. So when they refer to poles, they're referring to the cells kind of like the world. So if the center of the cell was the equator, one side or the other side would be like the north or the south of the earth. As we can see in this GIF, once those chromosomes are lined up in the middle, the spindle apparatus will then pull those chromosomes to be separated from one another, so those sister chromatids are being literally pulled apart one way or another, and they'll basically be in two separate regions of the cell. It's a lot like reeling in a fish from like a fishing rod. You're just pulling those chromosomes back towards you like you would pull a fish towards you out of water. And then already the last part of telophase is basically once those sister chromatids again were ripped apart and pulled to either one side of the cell or the other, the nuclear membrane, so the nucleus, reforms around those now single times DNA. So again, we started with double the amount of genetic information in one cell. Now we have two separate regions, each with one time or normal amount of genetic info in it. And those chromosomes also will unwind themselves back into the chromatin typical DNA form. And then the nucleus, again, will form around each of those new DNAs, essentially. And I'll just read the definition of telophase too. So it's the final phase of cell division between anaphase and interphase. So again, a new interphase would start up shortly after this, in which the chromatids or chromosomes move to the opposite ends of the cell and two new nuclei are formed. All right, so here are all the steps of mitosis looking nice and neat with one another. One important thing to note is that as soon as the nucleus has been formed and duplicated in telophase, that is technically when mitosis ends. So even though those cells are completely separated, all mitosis is the duplication of the nucleus. That's really all it is. So it's the splitting and duplicating of the nucleus. Cytokinesis, again, not technically part of mitosis. It ends once those two new nuclei are formed. Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe. And remember to spread kindness.